Do people care about freedom of speech? Do we fool ourselves into thinking we have true freedom of speech?
I feel so disconnected to the process.
You're not even touching what the bill is about.
If Bill 63 gets passed in its form that it currently is in, he's like, I'm gone.
If we continue down the path that we're on, what country are we leaving behind for our kids?
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Citizen. My name is Jeremy.
And I'm David. What's up, everybody?
David,
How are y'all?
This is the Citizen Podcast. I got to say right now, burning inside of me and David is this bill C-63, which is on the forefront of Canada. They're trying to push this through. We are here to talk about it today. I call this bill the pre-crime bill. I've heard a few people say that because just like the movie Minority Report, have you seen that?
I have. Years.
Tom Cruise, you're a huge Tom Cruise fan, aren't you?
Just lately, yeah.
You have a t-shirt and tattoo.
You know what I recently did though? We went through all of the Mission Impossibles from start to finish.
Oh, so good though.
And there's some bad ones in there, but I forgot how good some of them actually are.
My point about Tom Cruise though is the movie Minority Report, where they punish people before the crime is done. And there's a part in this bill that does exactly that. And so that's why I'm calling this the pre-crime bill.
Well, I think it raises a big question. Is freedom of speech important? Do people care about freedom of speech? And also another one, do we fool ourselves into thinking we have true freedom of speech?
Yeah.
Because you look at, I think it was Voltaire that said, I disagree with you, but I will fight to the death. So you can
disagree with me? I don't know.
I got to think of how it goes again.
I was like, there's just healthy anticipation. I was like, what is it?
Dramatic effect.
Yeah, exactly.
So everyone can listen. Voltaire said that if I disagree with you, but I'll fight to the death for your right to say what you think.
100%.
I said it differently, but
Absolutely.
That's pretty much it.
Absolutely. And that's the struggle that every nation has always seems to have, is where the power is shifted. And so in the conversation here, we have to discuss, where does law stand? What is law's role in a free country? Obviously, the nature of law is to take away freedom in the name of good.
Yeah.
It's a very brief way to say it. But law is to bring structure, hopefully. And so the thing that we need to discuss here today is that, I guess before we jump fully into it, I want to ask you, you posted on Instagram yesterday about people asking about C-63.
Yeah.
The thing that I find so frustrating about the process of bills is, and I would want to hear from anyone watching here too, if they feel the same way. I feel so disconnected to the process. I don't know when they're being made, when they're done. My life's busy. Everyone else's lives are busy. So we're just in the hustle. We're in the grind, the rat race. And then all of a sudden you hear about a bill and people are like, pay attention to this one, contact your MP. And the only way to be able to bring change, it feels like, is to send a letter. When was the last time you wrote a letter?
It's been a while.
And that's what I mean, is that it just feels odd and a bit ridiculous. But anyway, I have a few questions for it. Did anybody respond to you and say like they fully understood it and knew what it was? Because I have no one that I know that even knows what it is.
Majority of people in the poll did not know what Bill C-63 was. I asked the question, are you up to speed with Bill C-63?
Yeah.
I think it was, I should check now, but it's probably, last time I checked, 48% of the people were not aware of what Bill C-63 was. And that's the interesting thing about, I'll say one of the problems that you have with big government. We do have obviously a television channel, CPAC, that does constantly show what's happening in Parliament. And they do put things out on their website. But if you're not actively seeking or actively, amongst all the other things in your life that are important, it is tough to find out unless you are following maybe the right people. But I would consider that you're actively seeking what's going on. And there's interesting things that so many times, actually during COVID, there's some precedent-setting bills that went through where they actually didn't go through the proper process. They just pushed and rammed it through with the Liberal and NDP coalition that they had, right? So Bill C-63 is a big one. I'll bring it back a little bit for some history. If you remember back, I think it was 2016, where Bill C-16 came on about amending the charter and the rights to talk about sexual identity, sexual expression, gender identity, as that can be considered hatred and harms against people. And that was expressed, and that was a big thing at the time. But what some people are saying is Bill C-63 is that on steroids.
Yeah.
It's continued overreach. You have this bill was actually brought up in 2021 as Bill C-36, but it didn't go through because the election happened. So Parliament discontinued, and it was gone. So now it's brought back.
Yep.
The basics of it is called the
Online Harms Act.
Yeah, the Reduction of Child Online Harm, something like that. Which
Great. Sounds good.
yes, I want
And that's how they
children
always
to
are
be
framed.
harmed less.
That's the thing, is they're always framed that way. And so it's easy to just overlook and go, oh yeah, okay, Online Harms
Sounds
Act,
easy.
protect my kids, please go ahead.
The thing that I think we have to be aware as citizens is that if you're relying on a 1 or 2 liner summary
Yeah.
of a bill compared to the 100 pages
This
that's
one's
actually
102 pages long. Yeah.
that's actually involved, you're not even touching what the bill is about. And
Yeah.
if you aren't being aware, or you're not listening to people like us or others who are looking into this,
Yeah.
then it can be you can be easily fooled, because of course with what this is about, we don't want people to be harmed.
Yeah.
We want to reduce children being exposed to things online. But then the questions that come to my mind is, do we want to rely on the government for that?
Yeah.
Or how do we navigate those type of things? So
Yeah.
anyways, let's definitely dive into it. Is it worth starting off with this opening clip?
Absolutely.
So just to frame this clip up, this is a CBC report, a 2-minute report summarizing when this bill was brought up. Just so everybody knows, this bill was brought up in February, end of February, for its first reading. It has not gone back to Parliament for its second or third reading. Basically, they had debate about it, and then it goes away for revisions and changes. Then they'll come back and bring it again. That's the typical process. After it goes through the House, it will end up going to the Senate, and they'll have their debates and they'll do their votes as well. So this first reading happened in February. I'm going to press play so you guys can get an idea of what CBC's view of what this is.
To make its case for its new law against harmful internet content, the government turned to those impacted,
I may be one mother,
including this mother whose daughter was sexually assaulted with the images shared online while in kindergarten.
she was told or taught to believe that sex or sexual actions between children and grown-ups was completely acceptable and normal.
Or this black entrepreneur who says she was insulted online.
On a utilisé le mot en haine à volonté.
They called me the N-word repeatedly, she said. The Online Harms Act would recognize 7 categories of harmful content, including content that sexually victimizes a child or re-victimizes a survivor, or is used to bully a child, incites violent extremism or terrorism, or foments hatred.
I'm terrified by the dangers that lurk on the internet for our children. We have rigorous safety standards for things like my son's Lego at home. Yet somehow, none for the most dangerous toy, the screen that is in front of our children's
That's
faces.
a horrible
In
analogy,
order
by the
to
way, just so
enforce
everybody
these new
knows.
laws, the government is proposing a
What a
new
talk.
digital safety commission. It would have the power to order online platforms to remove content that sexually victimizes a child or intimate images shared without consent within 24 hours.
They took a really measured approach.
This expert, one of many the government consulted, said limiting the scope of that ability was key to preserve freedom of expression elsewhere, but also pointed to one gap in the legislation, how it leaves out private messages.
If you talk to many, who study extremism and in the child protection community, they'll talk about how that's such a key vector for communicating extremist messages and child sexual abuse material.
While one opposition party had its own criticism.
Algorithms are not touched, and algorithms are what delivers the hate online.
So, Rafi, this bill also proposes some criminal code changes.
The government wants to increase sentences for online incitement of hatred, specifically for promotion or incitement to genocide. That would mean a maximum sentence that goes up to life imprisonment from the current 5 years.
And can you take us through what happens next with the legislation?
The NDP does want this law to pass, though a stronger version of it. It wants debate in the House of Commons. The Conservatives last week called it Justin Trudeau's latest attack on freedom of expression. They were quiet on Monday.
There's a lot to unpack here. The thing is, when it's framed that way, largely you agree with majority of it.
Mm-hmm.
That the thing that you must unpack, and we will, there's a lot in there because they also glazed over things and missed it and skipped it and framed certain things in such a deceiving way. The thing is, though, is that when defining hate speech is probably step one. And when you look at the bill, even when you go to the very word of where it's never been officially defined as hate speech in the criminal code. There's no true definition in the criminal code.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time it comes into the criminal code. And they essentially, when you look at what the bill has, and I encourage people to go read it themselves, it's using synonyms of hate, the word hate. So it's just, it talks about hate. And if you have it in front of you, go ahead and read it. I don't know if you do or not.
Yeah.
But essentially it's using hate and then synonyms to define itself by its own words. Do you have it there?
Yeah. So what you're referring to is part of the bill, which is in
Mm-hmm.
the 100 pages to read, is there's 3 major amendments to the criminal code underneath what this bill would be, which is only a portion of what the entire bill is. And you're saying one of the changes they actually want to define hate because it hasn't been defined up to this moment. We know what hate means, but it's always been that almost hate, like beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like hate is in the eye of the beholder. So what it says here is that they want to define hate as the emotion that involves detestation, vilification, and that is stronger than disdain or dislike.
Which is so vague. And
Those
so
are all synonyms.
Exactly.
Of hate.
That's what I mean. Is it's defining based off of its own word. And so when you do that, like 99 out of 100 people that you and I grab off the street and just ask them, hey, should we stop hating? Yes. No one's going to go, yeah, we should hate more. Of course, on principle, we get it. But the real problem comes with the defining of it and then the decision maker of follow through on it.
And then also to add to it, though, is now you take it a step further, maybe a step deeper, and let's realize humans hate each other.
Yes.
You like people, you hate people.
It's the nature of countries.
I'm not advocating.
That's why we live in
should hate
separate
people.
places.
Yeah, borders represent separation of ideas. So what this is talking about, of course, people shouldn't hate each other, but they do. Let's just be honest, you guys. People hate things about each other or hate people. The question comes, do you have the freedom to express things that you dislike or you disdain? And that goes further. So now what this is proposing is trying to put parameters on what you can say based on human emotions and feelings that you may have.
Yeah.
I think there are some very obvious things that we can agree upon, is that because right now we do, just so everyone knows, there are hate crime laws and hate speech laws within our existing law in Canada. Talking about inciting violence. If you are publicly going and trying to incite violence or those that have to do against a people group or whatever it's in the charter that is defined by, we can all agree that, you shouldn't do that. Even if you feel that is bad because that's now infringing upon the rights of other people. But what this is doing is it's essentially, they're not defining it. They're saying that they're defining it, but they're not defining it. And
so essentially for me, the real problem comes with the broadness of that. And especially in the scope where I often think about any of these things in the outcome of the future of my family and my children. And you and I have both been teenage boys before, and teenage boys are honestly pretty stupid. I've done stupid stuff as a kid, not crimes, at least. I never did any crimes. I was never convicted of anything, but I've been in peer pressure moments, and I have a young boy who's 7. So in 9 years, my boy is going to be 16 years old, and he's probably going to be with some dumb situations with kids. And what I mean by this is when you look at what this is doing by amending the criminal code, any offense that is under, if you do any criminal offense under the federal government, they now can add an idea of going, was it motivated by hate? And if they can find a reason, let's say you did vandalism and it was a certain word or symbol or phrase of some kind that maybe my son was peer pressured into doing as a dumb teenage boy.
Yeah.
He could get life in prison according to this bill.
Yeah.
Which that is what I'm talking about. So you're leaving the interpretation up to someone who's going, yeah, I think it was motivated by hate. That's a pretty hateful thing to say. And the thing that also is wild is that words change, phrases change over time, symbols change. You look at cancel culture, they're digging back 10, 15 years and 20 years into people's pasts and going, wow, that's hateful. Holy man, times change. And so I think that's what scares me the most, is that there's such a vast overreach to the generations of our kids, and not only us. We are pretty wise in our own standing, and so like we tread lightly. We tread lightly. You're careful, and we understand the implications of words and this, but like a growing teenage boy who can be tried as an adult, as a 16, 17, 18-year-old can easily be tried as an adult for something stupid he's done, could possibly get him life in prison for a hate crime, so-called.
So let's dive into what you're talking about, because you're getting into one of the sections that is not, so it's going back to this CBC clip, is you can tell, first of all, is that it's interesting how they shaped it, because what they're saying is true, but it's not the whole truth.
Yes.
And it's versions of the truth.
Yeah.
And they don't go to the extreme. And notice at the end how the conservatives who are currently the opposition, their job is to is democratically oppose, if they think it's in the best interest of the country, things that the other government, to keep, it's a check and balance of how our government works. And this clip gave the conservative opinion all of 4 seconds at the end by stating a line saying this is an assault on freedom of speech, and they were quiet on Monday.
Yeah.
And the rest of it was all about, this is what the clip can do, this is what the bill can do, here's how it's going to reduce this. But once we're back to what you said, one thing you said is that life in prison you hit on. So the way CBC, just so everyone knows, this is why it's important to know and do your digging, and also know who you're listening to, because everyone has a certain bias in terms of how they are going to present something. They present by saying they want to extend and they want to expand the sentence for hate crimes, which generally people, if there's a legitimate hate crime that's going on, I think that, yes, generally a bigger sentence is okay. But that is just such a top level way to look at it. There are so many nuances about who's the arbitrator, who judges this, how is the law written, and how expansive is this? Because now we're getting back to what you said, life in prison. The way that this is, and this is one of the amendments to the criminal code, just so everyone knows, is it's not just about, we'll have to get to this later, Jer, the title of it about reducing online harms for children sounds good. But how does this bill do that?
Yes,
And it's so expansive, only a small portion goes towards that. And then they start moving into the criminal code, the charter, amending all these other areas, which, in my opinion, does reduce freedom of speech. But so what you're talking about here is it broadens the current category of hate crimes, hate offenses, to capture, get this, any offense.
That's
under the act at Parliament that is motivated by hatred based on a prohibited ground of discrimination. Note, we currently have these laws that prohibits a lot of this stuff, but the major problem with this in the criminal code, and listen up everyone, is that this can turn any offense into a hate crime.
And that's what I mean.
Let's talk about any offense in the criminal code, though. Any offense could be murder. We agree murder is wrong. People should go away for that. Why? Because now you're infringing upon someone else's right to live. So, but what other criminal offenses are there? Well, let's look at some minor ones, right? Stealing, vandalism is under the criminal code. Mischief. You've heard mischief. A lot of people are arrested or they're charged with mischief. These are minor offenses.
For sure.
So let's say our sons,
Yeah.
are charged at some point with mischief, and then we'll get to this later. Someone accuses them.
Yes. Anonymously.
Because this is part of the bill. Anonymously accuses them of doing something under the motivation of hate crime.
Yep.
Is that, and let's say you have a judge, and this is a whole nother discussion. We now have activist judges who are no longer looking blind at who they're looking at, but there's activism judges.
Yeah.
But a judge agrees that someone under how this is written could go away for life in prison because of hatred causing them to do mischief or vandalizing side of a building or whatever.
Yeah. Like, and this is the thing, like, even when I think back to moments of myself as a teenager, like I'll tell a very quick story, very quick, is I remember a moment I was 8 or 9 years old. My brother was 11. We were at a playground in a park, and my brother's friend walks up to my brother, and his name was Kevin, and he walks up to my brother, and he's got about 6, 7 guys behind my brother's friend walking up to us. And so me and my brother, we grew up in a little bit of a rough neighborhood, and my brother goes, "Hey, Kevin," and he doesn't even say hi to my brother. And Kevin walks up and grabs my brother's bike and looks at him and goes, "Man, don't resist me." He's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I'm stealing your bike. Don't resist me." He's like, "No, you're not stealing my bike." My brother goes to fight his own friend. Stop it. And then Kevin punches my brother, and then we're surrounded by 7 guys, and we have a decision to make. My friend, who's Kevin, we knew him well, didn't want to do this, but he was being pressured to do this, to steal my bike. Crime. That's a crime. He's stealing our bike in broad daylight and then assaults my brother. Now, we're just children. We're like young kids. He was like, they were 11, 12, 13 years old. But what I mean was he was being peer pressured to do a crime for his survival in the streets. And that's what I mean is, what if my son was in that situation? What if my son was Kevin being pressured by these boys? He doesn't know better. He's still learning. He's naive. And he does something stupid under the pressure that we've all been under. And then he gets life in prison, depending on who's interpreting it. And something worth pointing out here is that the clause, there's a clause in here that talks about anonymous reporting. And that's a wild part. And so it talks about anonymous reporting, and then it also talks about a word that is very frightening to me. And I don't mean to be, I'm not trying to virtue signal here. I'm not trying to gaslight any of this here, but these are all real words in here. There's a word in there that talks about intent. So the law is designed currently about beyond reasonable doubt. Mm-hmm. So to build a case, defend the case, build the case, defend the case, and you are innocent until proven guilty. This here talks about intent. So if I go and put an anonymous complaint against you, I go to magistrate, I complain about David Craig, and then I make a compelling complaint because I'm fearful that you might do some sort of terrorist type act. When you look at what the criminal code here is allowing, essentially, if that judge or magistrate is convinced that what I'm saying might be true, you haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
They can put you under house arrest. It says here for 2 months. They can monitor your body fluids. I'm not even making this up whatsoever. Yeah. They can monitor your bodily fluids.
Stop you from drinking
and consuming things. So I think what they're trying to do under the most extreme version of this is to stop you from taking altering substances that might make you do what they think you might do. But think about how overreaching this is. If someone is convincing enough, have you ever been in an argument where you're just out of your league and someone's you can't even compete or defend yourself?
I feel like all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Talk to
picking arguments over a guy.
Talk to our spouses.
Doing that. Yeah, exactly.
And so what I mean though is somebody could paint a case in a world full of AI artificial video where people look like you, looks like you, sounds like you. We're stepping into fronts that we've never been in before with laws that are so overreaching that could build a case against you in so quickly that if they're convincing enough, immediately puts you under such an intense amount of scrutiny of the law with potential of life in prison.
And you're talking about the expansiveness of this bill. Let's ask the question, what does this have to do, this portion, with protecting
online
children from online harm?
Yes.
We are now getting into the redefinition of the and amendments to the criminal code that can put people away for doing things that haven't nothing to do with children and online. Mm-hmm. And someone might be listening, yeah, but David, no one's going to go away for life in prison for mischief motivated by hatred. Okay, that's not a defense.
Why put it in the
bill
then?
Putting it in as law.
Yeah.
What we look at is, I always like to look at, is there trends going on? And you go back and you look at the trend that Canada is on. We've talked about Canada, likening Canada to being the Titanic. And what direction are we headed right now?
Yeah.
You look at what's happened, Bill C-63 in 2017, which is gone through and it was put into law in 2017. You look at, this was brought up again back to the freedom of speech. Doesn't mean I agree with what you say, but I do, and I'm an absolute firm believer that if you do not have freedom of speech, you do not have a free and democratic society. Our way of life, our culture, our country is built on the democratic process, free speech, being able to speak and to say what you think, even if I absolutely disagree with you.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we do have some things in place to try to minimize people causing harm to others. But The trend that we're on is that this is continually being more and more expansive, more and more overreaching, to the point now, and you touched on it, is that this idea of pre-crime that is going to cause people to self-censor, which we need to talk about in a second, because self-censorship is horrible. If you're not going to be able to speak what you think, how do we actually improve, and how do we continue to have a democratic process to think where we're going? But this idea of pre-crime is that now you can get charged, however the judge is deeming within this, how it's written, for something you haven't done yet, but someone else thinks. Let's say I've got a vendetta against you, Jeremy, and I think that you're acting, even if I don't think you're acting in a way, but I have a vendetta and I'm motivated by revenge. The way that this is written is I can go and put a complaint against Jeremy. Hey, Jeremy, he's on TV.
With no risk to you. Your name isn't even on it.
There's no cost. It's an easy way to put it. And this is going before the Human Rights Commission, which already has some serious issues it has to normally go and work through. And now they're going to be inundated by a bunch of victim people who want to get revenge on others. Is I could go ahead and I could say, you know what? I feel like Jeremy Press is going to commit a hate crime against me. He's going to do this, and this is how you should do it. And he's got a platform in which he can do it, which can talk to a lot of people. Now I've put that before the commission. Now they're going to be obligated to go and investigate. And if they find that there is cause, cause is actually the wrong word. If there is any sort of validity to what I'm saying, and that is great, and how to judge that accordingly, is you could be screwed because of it. And imagine how many times we're going to have this for different types of people complaining about different people and what kind of problem this can cause for something you haven't done. People, let's remember that. Something that Jeremy hasn't done. I just, in my perception, think Jeremy's going to do it.
Yeah. It's crazy. And then I can begin to pay penalty for something I have yet to do, which is crazy. For those also, too, if you guys are hearing random like thunder-like sounds, there's a crazy storm outside, and we have thunder and lightning and all sorts of stuff.
Apparently we have tin roofs.
That's the other thing. Every time you mention the Titanic, for those who are joining us, you're probably going to, I want to see some sort of Titanic graphic with iceberg straight ahead. I don't know, somehow let's build it into the show. But we talk about this a lot, and that's why we got this here. I don't know if we can see it there. The iceberg in the background. I'm not sure if, David, it's in your shot there. There you go. There's the iceberg.
The Titanic.
And I always think of this line.
Iceberg right ahead! Understand!
Iceberg straight ahead! And the whole point we're making that point is that the ship was so big and so vast. And I see that as the government that we currently have, is that it's so large, so vast. We're screaming about something that's right in front of us, and it's too big to move. And so what do? We slam right into the iceberg. And we don't have to hit the iceberg. Like something that you and I've always talked about here is that we are the citizens, and the citizens are the difference makers that can get involved, join your school boards, help with curriculum, get your MPs understanding your positions
shift the
on
conversation
things.
that's happening, or don't be afraid. We talked. I mentioned this earlier. Let's talk about that now. Self-censorship, because when people start being afraid to speak what they think, so what this is proposing, people will become afraid to speak what they think, on the basis that someone else might lodge a complaint against me and I could actually pay a real penalty. I didn't mention this, Jeremy. If I lodge a complaint against you at no cost, no lawyers, lodge it in there. Now, guess what? In the investigation, you're going to have to lawyer up. You're going to have to have a cost to cover that lawyer. You're going to have to be able to
drown someone that you don't like
and protect yourself exactly, without even knowing that I'm the one who's sitting across from you. I'm not going to do this, but sitting across from you that lodge a complaint against you. So this is going to cause people who are just citizens of Canada, who are just trying to figure out, how do I live my life? How do I provide for my kids? How do I navigate the future for my family? How do I enjoy my life and do the things I want to do? It is going to cause people to self-censor because they don't want to be put in the spotlight or on there. Even if they don't have thoughts that are hate crimes, hate motivated, the way that this is read, it could be just a difference of opinion. Anyways, if people also, I want to know, if you guys don't like what we're saying,
we want to hear about
if you think that we're wrong on this, Let us know, because this is such an expansive bill. 1 hour of me and Jeremy talking is not going to get into everything. We're going to only hit the things that are standing out to us. But let us know what your thoughts are. Let us know if you agree with it. If you didn't know about Bill C-63, go and read it and then let us know. Write in the comments, email us, call. Yeah, you can't call us. There's no phone number. Go to returnthereason.com and let us know what you're finding out about this. Because, Jeremy, to back this up, because we're getting into the nitty-gritty of this symptom of a larger problem that we're noticing in our country. That's a trend.
Yeah.
This, again, in my opinion, is it's an assault on freedom of speech, which we should talk about what is true freedom of speech.
And something I want to say as you talk about that, because there's two things we have to touch base on there, is self-censorship. I want to go a little bit deeper into that.
Sure.
and the dangers of that. But then we also have a QR code we're throwing on the screen, because something that frustrates me is I feel like I never know what to do, where to go, how to do it. So we're built a QR code so that you can essentially get to your MP, your thoughts on how to oppose Bill C-63 if that's how you feel. If you don't and you're all for it, tell us, please. I want to find out why. I want to question. I want to hear why you're for it. Because in my opinion, every Canadian citizen should be grossly offended by the overreach here in what this bill is doing. It's not proper by any means.
Yeah, again, just the overreach. And it's a symptom of something larger, of showing a progression in our country towards tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to know what we think, we have to be able to speak what we're thinking so that we can work out what we actually think. If I say something to you, here's what I think, and I start saying it, that gives you the ability to respond to me and say, I disagree with you on that. Or actually, I think you're misled on this. Or, yeah, that's a good point. That helps me shape what I think. And this idea of self-censorship, where I will now be afraid to even say what I think. Now, I'm not just talking about hate, because I'm not afraid of speaking up, because I don't have hatred in my heart or want to commit things based on because I hate people groups or individuals. No, but this is written in such a broad, expansive way that even if I disagree with what, quote unquote, the current government could be thinking, or things that they're putting out there, is that in theory could be used as the definition of hate, because I might have disdain or whatever.
And under this here is under, I'm reading the exact bill exactly. Hate crime 320.1001. If anyone wants to read it, it says everyone who commits an offense under this act, or any other act, of Parliament, if the commission of the offense is motivated by hatred based on race, national or ethnic origin, language, color, religion, sex, age is a category, mental or physical disability, sexual orientation, or gender identity or expression, is guilty of an indictable offense. And did I say it right?
Indictable. There's a C.
No.
It's indictable.
Indictable offense and liable to imprisonment for life. Do you see the broadness of every one of those topics? And they're all open to interpretation. They're extremely broad. Age is a form of hatred. Please, someone.
Ageism.
Please give me someone. Please, I can't even wrap my brain around that.
And to give you just a little background of how this is we have the Canadian Human Rights Commission, which is charged at dealing with some serious issues in terms of in the workplace, different areas in our country where there might be some real discrimination going on, right? For example, if there is someone who was not hired, if they have the right merit and they are qualified for a position, but yet let's say they didn't get hired because of they might not be of a certain race, or they might be of a certain ethnic group. If someone can prove that, those are the types of cases that the Human Rights Commission needs to investigate, and they need to work out, because we want to avoid that, because there are people who do have some messed up views that discriminate based on those type of things. So that's what the Human Rights Commission goes and does. This is allowing people to inundate them with massive amounts of complaints. Things like that. So that's what I wanted to make sure everyone knows, is that is where a lot of this will be going through. We have the criminal code that's being amended. But also what's interesting about this is in our charter, there was a section 13, which was actually repealed by the Harper government back in, I think it was like 2014 or something like that, because there was an abuse of this power that was happening. And the government at that point decided we need to pull this out because it's too vague. There's an abuse of power. It's an overreach. And what Bill C-63 is essentially doing is bringing that back into play.
Yeah.
And in theory, there might be some good intention as to why, but the deeper, like, an iceberg, speaking of icebergs, you only see the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
And the majority of the iceberg is actually under the water. You have to pull back the water to see the rest of it. In this case, there's a lot more to this that doesn't have to do with how it's being presented to each one of us. And why that's important as us as citizens, because if you just take a 1 minute, 2 minute glimpse as what the government wants to do in terms of how they portray it, then there's a lot of other things that get slid under the radar that actually will affect you. It'll affect your kids. It will affect the future because, again, I said earlier, if you do not have freedom of speech, if you do not have the right to express what you think and how you think, you do not have a free and democratic society, even if it's ugly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think something that, as a parent, I wrestle with this a lot because we live in an age of technology, iPad screens and smart TVs and so on and so on and so on. And something that I want to ask people watching is, do you think it's the government's role to protect your children or you? Whose role is it? And it seems as though the government thinks it's their role and they'll do it. And which is wild to me because the reason is I, as a parent, I have powers that I can do to restrict my children's limit to internet access. I can block websites. I can sign up for things that stop certain websites or alert me privately and let me know your child has gone on this site or they've searched for this. I can also there's certain apps that allow you to turn off your Wi-Fi router.
Yep.
I can also not give my kid an iPad. I can also not give my kid a phone. You can say no. And so instead of empowering the parents, let's build some laws. Let's build some bills in here that just blanket a whole bunch of things and give it in the name of Online Harms Act, which essentially is a limitation of communication between citizens. That if we had a divine government, meaning a God figure who had no insecurity, sure, maybe you could have some moral God that could run it, but it doesn't exist. You're dealing with human beings who are human beings and they're flawed and they have motives and they have flawed things that they deal with as individuals. And they're the ones at the control. They're at the helm of this whole thing and they can decide and dictate and they can appoint judges. And whoever is in those seats are the ones who control the direction of the country and how these laws are played out.
And we as citizens put the government there.
Yeah.
But it's up to us to hold them accountable to say, are you actually doing what you said you would do?
Yeah.
Or are you going beyond the scope? I mentioned the thing earlier about trends. This is also trending greater and greater in the direction of more and more government control, greater amounts of bureaucrats, more and more, call it red tape, expansive, large government that leans into not abiding by the law to protect human rights, but using the law as a tool for what they want to do. I want to show this clip of Bruce Pardy, who is a professor in Canada. He's a legal academic. He's a brilliant mind when it comes to the law. Here's an interview that he had, and I think it's a pretty good clip.
This is with David Leese?
No, this is with Jordan Peterson, Bruce Pardy, and Constantine. Forget his last name, but here it is.
C-63 is a reflection of how, just one more reflection of how we are losing the law. We are losing in C-63 the idea of free speech itself. You know that old quote that people always refer to from Voltaire's biographer? The one that goes, right, I disagree with what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say. I think the reason that quote is trotted out so often is that when you come right down to it, most people don't agree with that. Everybody says they believe in free speech. Everybody. Justin Trudeau has said he believes in free speech. There's a guarantee of free speech in the Chinese constitution.
Right.
Okay? It's very easy to say. And what they really mean is, yes, I believe in free speech, but. And it's within the but where you can find out whether or not they really do believe in free speech. So
So that's what I wanted to show, because comes down to, we believe this. It's in our charter. Yeah. It's written in words in a paper, but what does it actually mean? Because using the word freedom of speech, we have limitations on what we can and can't say. So it's not true freedom.
Yeah.
I want to know, like, do you think we should have true freedom of speech?
Yeah.
Like, you can say, even if it's vile and ugly, you should be able to say what you think.
I think the only restriction that anyone should ever have on that, and I think this would almost be universal even across professors of laws, is if you're calling to violence, calling to immediate violence of any kind. I think that should probably be the only restriction. And then even that, I think you have to delicately define that, very delicately. I think that's my initial thoughts on it, but yes, I do. I think you should be allowed to. I don't think it exists. There's a whole YouTube channel I follow, and he had a sign there. He goes and debates at colleges, and he goes, hate speech isn't real. Would you disagree with me? And he sits down and debates people. And he essentially he's talking from the United States, just essentially saying, yes, there are things that people say that are vile and disgusting and this, but we must allow the freedom so that the good ideas can defeat the bad ideas. And if you, in the name of trying to stop the bad ideas, you'll often overstep and kill the good ideas so they cannot even talk.
Yep.
And especially when you look at religion, religions have beliefs that all of these laws are overreaching into. And so you're stopping the freedom of religion in Canada as well. When certain religions believe certain things, you're putting legal bounds on top of so-called freedom of religion that no longer will exist.
Especially when you have religions that are contrary to what culture is saying
always
as well, what they want. So who's going to win that battle? And then at the same time, we're putting the government in the place of being arbiter of what is right and wrong to say. So that question, freedom of speech, I think each person, if you're listening, you have to answer for yourself. What do you think the limitations are for what freedom of speech should be? Because I'm in agreement with you. I think no matter how vile or ugly it may be, or how good it may be, you should have the freedom to express. Now, if you're expressing something vile and horrible to me or my wife in person, I'm going to take matters into my own hand. You're going to suffer a consequence from what you're saying in that moment. And there is this idea that we do have to act with respect.
The beautiful
and love.
thing about that, though, is
but I don't want the government to...
It's exposed. Do you know what I mean by that? You get what I'm saying?
I don't.
What I'm saying by that is, if you make it so dangerous, landmines so there's evil people. There's evil people that are all around us. And there's so many landmines that they're going to try to hide their evil, and it's not exposed, and you don't know where they are, and they're never going to show it to you, and they're going to be incognito and secret about it as best they can. But in a place where I want the evil people to show their head and let them pay the price for it by being so vile and stupid that the people around them will hold them accountable. That if someone says something to you in front of them, that they're gonna pay the consequences for it. And that's what I mean is you're not actually changing people. You're causing them. It's a Band-Aid to a solution. You're not culturally changing the culture.
Yeah.
You're putting a Band-Aid on it and just having them bury it under the soil. You can't see it, but it's there.
So to expand upon, and just so everyone is aware of where this bill is at, this is not law yet.
Yeah.
It has gone through the first reading, and there'll be multiple readings in theory. They've actually pushed things through in the past, which was unconstitutional in my opinion, but it has to go through a process. That's why it's very important for people to be aware of this, because if you go back to Bill C-63, and the thing that came of Bill C-63 is the compelled speech of calling people by their preferred pronouns. Now, if I'm talking with someone, I got my views on what gender is and what sex is, and my view is that you have two of them. For me, I don't even need to debate that, but under the Bill C-63, if there is somebody who does not want to be used by traditional pronouns, he or she, or consider themselves male, female, is that I am compelled to have to call them what they want. And if I don't,
you're being hateful towards me.
It'll be considered, I can be charged under harassment or what other things. Now, the important thing here is the being compelled by the government to control my speech out of respect for someone, out of relationship, out of human relation. If I'm talking or walking with this person and they say, hey, do you mind calling me this? Out of my choice and out of respect for the person, I don't have a problem talking and communicating with them that way. But in order now for it to be controlled and enforced by the law that I have to speak a certain way, you are now controlling speech, and you now have stopped the progression of ideas to challenge what good and bad ideas are. And just one second, Jerry. Underneath this new amendment in Bill C-63, let's say someone wants me to refer to them as a non-female or I don't even know all the terms anymore, but something like that. And let's say I'm not doing that because it goes against what I think someone is, a biological male or a biological female. Now, if I get complained about, or I could be charged being motivated by hate on that. Yeah. And in theory, if it goes the full way and to the extreme of how the law is written, it's not far reaching that I could potentially do a lot of jail time. At the very minimum, pay a fine to that person, which is financially motivating them. Totally. They could get $20,000 from me if I'm charged. Again, you're financially motivating them to complain about me, an additional $50,000 to the government. So my point is that this freedom of speech to be able to say what you think is slowly it's eroding away from us, which you mentioned. I love what you said in one of our opening episodes, is that the moment a nation starts to demonize conversation, it's the beginning of the fall. And we are in the middle of that. It's not early on in the game, everyone. We are in the middle of that.
Yeah, and to elaborate even further on that is that conversation of C-16 opened up pronouns. But just as you even said right now, I don't even know them all. I've seen so many videos of people going, I don't know them all at all. And then when I saw a list of them all, I don't even know how to say some of them, and nor never mind define them. And so then my next question is, who's it up to as far as creating that list of offense? You've got to call me this, and I make the rules, and you got to abide by it. That's where you're trying to play a legal battle against a game you don't even understand.
And you
don't know the rules.
I'm not trying to be dramatic about this, but it is incomputable. If you go to the fullest expansion of what every individual would want to be called. I know there's certain letters and there's certain names right now, but the theory that is based upon individuals and groups of how they express themselves. But that is ever expansive if we continue down that path. So that's just a side point. The biggest thing, though, is I have such a problem with is that I want Canada to be a place where people can express ideas, and may the best ideas win. But when you start to demonize speech and you start to criminally affect people from saying what they think to the point of they're afraid of, gosh, how many people in Canada can afford if they have to pay $20,000 to someone because they said something that disagreed, which at one point was maybe mainstream. Maybe it is still a mainstream thought, right? Again, it's not about being mainstream or not, but it's the idea that you can express. People are going to censor themselves. I'm not even going to go into that arena, right? So if the public as citizens aren't going into that arena to have that conversation on the public soapbox, then who's determining the direction that is now going in that area? Well, it's the government that is doing that now. And again, bad ideas produce bad results. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. I think patience is a big thing we have to understand with citizens, is that you might not care about it because you don't see it happening overnight in front of your eyes. But it's like the boiling frog syndrome. Is that, how do you boil a frog? Well, you don't throw them in boiling hot water because they'll jump right out. You just put them in something where they're comfortable. Then you move the temperature slowly. And before you know it, is that it'll never jump out. It'll slowly die. You are done because you didn't act when things were slowly, meaning the fence is slowly being moved. And that's the whole thing, is I think even in this whole study of understanding C-63 and the implications of it, I sent multiple videos to multiple friends and families, and a response I got most of the time was, oh man, this is a lot. I don't know if I can watch this all. This is big. This is a lot. And so that's the whole motivation by what we're doing here, is we're trying to make it in bite sizes, that we do the work and hopefully lay it out for the citizens watching. And hopefully they grab traction and go, whoa, like we want to make these things easier so that we can actually make a difference here in our country, because this is a country we're fighting for, and we're not getting to I'm not giving up. We're not giving up at all.
I want to live here. I want to be here. I can't tell you how many times over the last couple of years I've heard good friends of mine say, yeah, I've never thought I'd have to think about where to move, what country to move out of.
Yeah.
Like, what country to move into from Canada. Like, and I've heard it, I heard it twice this last week.
Yeah.
Twice this last week. I had a friend of mine say, Bill C-63 is the line. This is the line. If Bill 63 gets passed in its form that it currently is in, he's like, I'm gone. I'm moving. It's too far gone. And
well, that's a good point you said, because this is one of those major turning points if Bill C-63 goes. Here, I want to read it in a second. I'll read an excerpt from this book. But if it goes too far, that is a line that's like, okay, are we past a point of no return if this goes through? The positive side of me is I like to think we're never past the point of no return. We can always come back, but we're making it harder and harder and harder on ourselves. We've talked a lot about the things we don't like in this bill. I think it's probably important to address. So the overarching idea about this bill reducing online harms for people. Can we talk about that for a second? Because
even that though, I still think it's. Go ahead and give your pitch to it, but I still think it's such.
I don't have a strong
foolish
one because
approach.
I feel like online is the public soapbox.
Yes,
like you looked at the first clip we talked about with our Minister of Justice, and also just so you know, people don't know this, he's also the Attorney General of Canada, so he holds two positions, which sometimes can be a conflict of interest. He made the analogy of we've got strict guidelines for how our kids play with Lego, but yet we have nothing for them when they're online. First off, I think it's a horrible analogy because Lego is something you play by yourself within the confines of your home under the protection of your parents. If you're a kid that's also going online, you are no longer underneath that hedge of protection that the home provides.
Totally.
You are now going into the public sphere where people can say and do what they want anonymously and can hide. And I think first off, I got to bring us back to the parents.
Yeah.
If you as parents are not bringing guidelines, if you're not guiding your children, if you are not restricting them in how they accurately view,
the government's
and look
not going to do it.
You are forsaking your job as a parent.
Even if they try, the government's not going to do it right.
Yes. And then what he's saying is we want to give this job to the government. No, hell no, I'm not doing that in my household.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. I'm going to raise my kids and show them that thing. So first off, that analogy of equating this bill to taking that spot.
I see the internet, if I had to do an analogy, would be it's like the road. It's dangerous. It's out there. There's crosswalks. There's ways to use it. And I have to teach them. And even when my little kids get out there, I'm like, watch out. Stop at the curb.
Yeah.
It's me.
Yeah.
I'm not going, police officers, where are you? Guide my children. No, it's me.
Yeah.
My little 3-year-old running across. It's me. Stop. Walk there. Wait, car's coming. That car could kill you.
Yeah.
Like, it's me. And that's exactly how I feel the internet. Even when they police the internet, which is a whole, in my opinion, another dangerous slope, because now you're policing something that is where people advertise and do their companies and their products and their money and their businesses and their finances. And you're going to now restrict all this, which is a whole nother conversation of online content restriction. But then also you're talking about, we're in 2024. Almost everyone I know has a VPN, which is a virtual private network, for those who don't know, which goes outside of your location. Meaning, what are you restricting? How are you going to restrict that? You can't.
Sure.
Like and so what I'm saying is it seems as though this is almost a front. This is in the names of Online Harms Act and to protect your children, we're also going to amend the criminal code and all these other things. And that's, to me, is why we're so focused on the negative side, is because I can't help but look where it's a bait and switch is actually exactly what it feels like, a bait and switch. Look at what we're doing, and we're actually doing
good. It's good cover.
Yeah.
On the surface, it sounds great.
Yeah.
And a majority of the bill, and I'm not exaggerating, a majority of the bill has nothing to do with that.
You're right, yeah.
And the portion that it does, and I don't think is effective. I personally just don't think you can change that because of how expansive the internet is. You can't patrol and control the internet. You look at these battles of companies like X and Facebook and all of these guys who are worldwide for the most part, might be the odd country that's not letting them in. But it is so hard to patrol. And how does Canada patrol all of those things? They're trying to put emphasis on the social media giants to control and stop what people do. Yes, I do not want children to be exploited online. I think things like that is absolutely horrific and evil, and those guys don't deserve to live who do that kind of stuff. But I just don't see it working, you trying to put the emphasis on these social media giants to stop and reduce. There's always ways around it. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying I'm saying the responsibility comes back to the parents to protect at all costs what's going on with your kids. And on that first clip with CBC, they used a story, which is a heartbreaking story of a mom and a kid. And she used the line of again, David's paraphrase version, how online taught my kid that it's okay for sex between adults and minors. I believe it was something like that.
And that's a parent's fault.
100%. Using the word taught. How much time is involved?
Yes.
How much exposure is involved? I know if I'm taught something, it takes me time to learn it.
Shut off the internet. Take it away.
So this is the point of people's greater and greater reliance on the government to do the job of what should be done in the home. And if we continue down that path, which we already are, we're seeing the families being destroyed. We're seeing emphasis going to the government wanting to do more and more things with children and family. That is something I will refuse to give up, and I will fight to the end to never give that up.
And this comes down to a worldview. Is I can hear the skeptics saying to me, and please, if you're on the show watching, please comment, because I can honestly predict. I have some friends of mine who are drastically different worldview than me, which is great. I love it, actually. I really do. Because they would say to me, what are they going to do? How are you going to take the internet away from them at school? And their friends' iPhones, and they're this. If it's my kid, I'm taking them out of school if it's that far. I'm not letting them go. I would change my job. I would move my home. It's that important to me. I would do anything and everything to protect the mind of my child. Anything. I would get them out of the scenario no matter what. And there's some people who wouldn't. And that to me it's a worldview difference.
Totally.
It really is.
I think it's good to read Section 2 of the Charter, just so everyone's aware of it.
What is it? What's the title?
Section 2 of the Charter of the Rights and Freedoms for us is a section of the Constitution of Canada that lists what the Charter calls our fundamental freedoms. And theoretically, applying it to everyone, right? But I also think just because it's written on a paper doesn't mean it's actually practical. But regardless of whether they are a Canadian citizen or an individual corporation, the freedoms, I'll read it here. These freedoms can be held against actions of all levels of governments and are enforceable by the courts. The fundamental freedoms are freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of thought, freedom of belief, freedom of peaceful assembly, and freedom of association. I want to say out of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, out of those 6 fundamental freedoms, Bill C-63 is an assault on 4 of the 6 for sure, maybe 5 of the 6. So freedom of expression.
I laugh out of emotional distress.
just complete brokenness. Just you're actually crying laughing. So Bill C-63, when you dive into it, does it inhibit our freedom of expression, whether good or bad? Guys, let's remove our emotions from it for a second. We don't agree with everyone, but do people have the right to express what they feel? Well, according to the Charter, they should. Freedom of religion. Well, now there's an assault on freedom of religion, because you look at different faiths that have got ideas and thoughts that are being used. There's an example in 2007 of a Catholic priest who wrote an article in a Catholic magazine that Charter 13 at the time, which was removed by the Harper government, and now this is seeking to bring it back in, was basically, it was used against him, saying this is a hate crime because of his stance against gay marriage. So, but what does his faith express?
His faith, his religion.
So he, in theory, should have the right to express what he thinks, even if you disagree with it. Freedom of thought. So what I think, in theory, I speak. And we talked earlier about the importance of being able to converse back and forth, to work out our thoughts, and we just speak what we think. If you aren't thinking something, you're not speaking. So again, an assault on that. Freedom of belief. If someone holds a belief that there are 2 genders, or that marriage should only be between a male and female, or whatever it might be that's controversial in our age, is that if someone holds those beliefs, What is this doing against that? Freedom of peaceful assembly, I don't think it has anything to do with that. Freedom of association, you can maybe make an argument for that as well. The point is that do we live in a free and democratic society? Do we want to continue living in a free and democratic society? Or are we okay with the slow erosion of what our country was built upon and founded upon, which gives you the right to live your life and how you're living your life?
Very well said. Very well said. The one last thing I want to say is when and maybe this is opening a can of worms for another show. What I witnessed during COVID was two sides of a very large conversation, vaccinated versus unvaccinated. And I saw a lot of hate on both sides. Mm-hmm. And I say the word hate very intentionally. Hatred. People saying, I hope you from both sides. I hope both sides were saying, I hope you under this, those are all hate crimes. Because under the definitions, it's under motivated by hatred based on race, national, ethnic origin, language, color, religion, sex, age, mental, physical, or disability, sexual orientation, and gender identity, expression, blah, blah, blah. It just keeps going. Just keeps going. Under that definition, there would have been hate crimes everywhere.
You know what? I think it's worth... You're right. COVID was a massive overreach
and it was
of the law.
Exposed.
And the law being used as a tool.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a continuation of that. Mm-hmm. These things trend and flow in one direction. It never seems to turn around. And I want to read an excerpt from this book. I've been trying to read some guys who are a lot older than we are. This guy was born in the year 1800. His name's Frederick Bastiat, and he wrote a book called The Law. It's actually an essay called The Law. And he was a political philosopher, a political economist.
Where's he from? Do you know?
French.
Oh, okay.
Or France. So
I could have picked that up.
He's a
by
French
his name.
guy. Yeah, Fred. Well, my horrible French accent. So this is called, it's just called The Law. The law perverted. The law, and in its wake, all the collective forces of the nation. The law. I say not only diverted from its proper direction, but made to pursue one entirely contrary. The law became the tool of every kind of avarice instead of being its check. The law, guilty of that very iniquity which it was its mission to punish. Truly, this is a serious fact. If it exists, and one to which I feel bound to call the attention of my fellow citizens.
Oh, man.
So this was written
in hang that up on the wall.
1840, something around there. I love the last part. He feels the call. He feels bound to call to action his fellow citizens because the law is being turned from what is supposed to be a check and balance to protect our rights and freedoms, which is not given by the government. It is their laws there to protect the rights and freedoms that we've been given by God.
The cure is worse than the disease.
But now the government is using the very thing that's supposed to protect our rights, using it as a tool to control. So instead of being rule of law, it's now rule by law.
Yeah.
So anyways, I just, when I read that, I was like, there's nothing new under the sun.
Holy man,
it's
that's cool.
Exactly what we are going through again, where you see a slow shift of the law being used to control citizens. Again, what's the purpose of our show? To empower citizens, to remind you and let you know what it means to be a citizen, the duty, the responsibility that we have. It's not just a blessing. It is a blessing, but there is a duty and a responsibility, and we have to be action orientated in order to be on purpose about the country we want to see. Because we framed this question a number of times. If we continue down the path that we're on, what country are we leaving behind for our kids?
Exactly.
Anyways.
I don't even want to add to that because it's perfectly said.
Well, perfectly. Thank you.
Just
say that one more time.
I'll give it to you once. It's good.
Just give it to
once is good.
All right. Well, you guys, we got into we barely touched the surface of Bill C-63. We did a deeper job than what CBC did.
Yeah.
So just remember who you're listening to and find out what people's biases are. Jeremy and I, our biases are we want the best country we can. We think the country should be built on freedom and the rights that we have should be protected. I generally like smaller government. I think government is necessary at the same time. I just don't like bad ideas.
Small government, for sure.
So you as a citizen, do your job.
Follow, like, subscribe, comment. Please do. We want people to disagree with us, and that's the beauty of conversation.
Yeah. If we said something wrong,
absolutely.
Call us out on
Nail it.
We're not experts. If we find out we said something wrong, hey, we'll change. If you got better ideas, hey, I'm open to hearing it too, and we'll talk about it. Looking forward to addressing what people are thinking. So, see y'all later.
See you guys.
Seeking truth and knowledge.